All right, so today we're actually going to talk about and show you how I do some very simple planting. Gardening is something that's a really complex science, but sometimes you can just do things a little simply. The first stage, though, whenever you want to plant a garden, is you have to clear the weeds out. And so there'll be a little video showing. What I generally do is I will use a lawnmower to get it kind of down, get most of it down, and or a weed eater, and then I'll use a propane torch and burn the weeds. All right, and that's the fastest way to clear the weeds in my experience. What we're going to be planting today is a few basic fall crops. We have beets, shallots, lettuce, and kale. So after you have cleared your weeds, I try to keep the tilling and the disturbing of the soil to a minimum to kind of preserve nutrients. So I don't till or dig. I just use a drill with an auger. And today I'm going to be drilling my holes about a foot-ish apart. And so this is going to go kind of quick. Okay, something really important that I learned the hard way when you're doing this, you don't want to just keep drilling down. You want to stop and back it up a little bit to where you're throwing out the extra soil. If this thing gets in a bind, it will jerk its way free and it can harm your wrist or hit you in the knee and bruise you pretty badly. So we want to avoid that. My soil here is very heavy clay. So when I drill these holes, I tend to add some amendments to it to help it. So what I have here is just some compost and manure that I bought down the street. That helps fertilize a lot of things, but for my high nitrogen fertilizer, I have a very historic, high complex fertilizer, fish. So these are just some fish we caught. They're just some brim and some red-eared sunfish and a variety of other kind of little small panfish. So I could have eaten these and gotten about 3 or 4 bites of meat out of it and had to dig through the bones, or I can use it in a hole as fertilizer and get 6 or 7 months worth of kale. That's only for plants that require a lot of nitrogen, like kale, lettuce, shallots. For plants that don't, I don't use the fish. So like the beets, I won't use fish. I will use just straight up the compost mix. That also allows the beets roots to stretch a little bit and kind of grow into more of a bulb. Fish have a strong smell. I don't want anything digging up my holes and ruining my plants. So I just use straight up barnyard lime on the fish. Not only does that help reduce the smell of the fish, it helps my soil a bit. My soil is very heavy clay and tends to kind of lack in calcium already. So this adds calcium to my soil and neutralizes the smell of the fish. We're gonna start putting these in the ground. So I'm starting with a beet here. So this is a beet. So I am not going to use a fish here. I'm just gonna kind of fill the hole most of the way. All right, then we're gonna pop my plant out. Just gonna wiggle this a bit. When you pop your plants out like so, you wanna tease the roots a little bit, let them spread out. Then I will put the beet in the hole and kind of fill it in a little bit. One beet down. Now this, being a shallot, I'm going to use a fish for that. So these fish are frozen. I usually defrost them first, but today I didn't quite have the time. So we're gonna stuff them down the hole. Maybe a little bit more work than usual when I've got the fish nice and defrosted, but I think it'll still work.
Peter's gonna hate you.
God. I'm gonna add the lime to the fish. A little bit of compost, and that will slowly fertilize the plant for months. This technique was taught to the Pilgrims, actually, by the Native Americans, who had long figured out fish was a good natural high nitrogen fertilizer. Cover it up. 2 plants planted. Now, if you look at this hole, there's a little bit of weeds that remained. Do yourself a favor, and when you get that kind of situation, just yank them. so they don't have as much of an opportunity to grow back. Okay, this is lettuce. Lettuce could benefit from the fish, but it tends to be a kind of a quicker crop than kale would be. So I think I'm just gonna pass on the fish for this one. Just put a little compost in there, tease the roots a bit, put it in the hole. Voila. As you can see, this is my soil. Very heavy clay. It's actually very high in nutrients, but it's so hard to work with. And when clay gets either too wet or too dry, it tends to kind of hold the nutrients and not want to share them. So it really helps a lot to amend the soil when you're dealing with a lot of clay. If you notice, I alternate my plants with these shallots. The smell of anything in the onion family tends to help prevent pests. They can't really smell the plants that are close to it, so the bugs can't find it. If they're already there, they'll find it, they'll eat it. But if you look down here, see where the kale, this kale has been undisturbed by pests because it's right there between two shallots. They can't find it. So that's a very handy trick. Shallots grow the best here. They don't care about the heavy clay soil as long as I break it up a bit. Now, I also use fish for the kale because these kale plants will continue to provide me food until the temperature kind of stays above 80 degrees. So I may, if we have a cool spring, I may have kale in April. And here we are, we're in December. Some of these were planted September-ish. And I will have food until March or April, depending on the weather and the bugs and stuff like that. So it's quite a bit of an investment, in my opinion. Just stick a fish down the hole and let it slowly decompose and slowly provide nutrients for my kale. If you don't like kale, you can do this with other things like collard greens and mustard greens and other types of greens that you're going to harvest for a long period of time. Sideline, compost. There we go. All right, we'll just keep going. The frozen fish plan didn't work quite as well. It bent my trowel, but this is just kind of a inexpensive trowel from the garden store. I also trap as a hobby, so my trapping shovel, the frozen fish were made, this thing made short work of those frozen fish. Got it down the hole pretty easily compared to trying it with the trowel. So as I teach others, I learn myself. All right, so after I plant, I generally start everything in containers, so we do need to get the next wave ready. It's December, so the only thing I can really plant come next wave in a couple weeks would be shallots. So I have my bag of shallots. Shallots don't come in seeds. You get them in what's called a set. You can also get the seeds, but they tend to not really work. I've tried shallot seeds. They're not as effective. So a set is basically just a dried up shallot bulb. So I use these 4-inch containers. Sometimes I'll use smaller ones. These are only like a quarter, so it gives a little extra room. And I always use a really good seed starter. This is a professional growing mix that I get. And so you want something that's good to start your seeds. You want them off to a healthy start. So I fill my container up to about the line. Generally, there's a general rule for planting seeds. You want a seed to go twice as deep as its basic width. So this one's about a fingernail wide. So about 2 fingernails deep. And press it in, and that's it. It's done. All right, at the end, when I'm done with all of them, I'll water them, just enough to where water's coming out the bottom. And that's it. I'll keep them a little moist. So this guy's pretty eager. He's growing, and he's not even in the soil. Keep them moist. I don't water them constantly. I water them as needed, depending on the weather. That may be 3 times a week. It may be once a week. And sometimes it rains enough to where I don't need to water them at all. Enough rain kind of whips in under the porch. I do start them on my front porch. It It really protects them from the direct sun and the direct rain, but still they're getting kind of a taste of the environment, and so they're not little spoiled wimpy plants whenever it comes time to put them into the ground. There's a million different ways of doing gardening. You always get your hands dirty though, no matter what you do. And this just works for me. This works with my soil. The basics of gardening are the same as they've always been. You got to figure out a way how to get rid of the weeds, which is the competition to your plants, how to dig them up, plant them, and how to keep them fed, and how to keep the pests out. And these are just a few little ways that I've found work throughout my experience gardening. And stay tuned for more videos.